The Tennessee Titans are frauds. Okay, I'm being a little undiplomatic, but they bring a 6-3 record to Lambeau Field on Thursday night on a short week, and they are not a 6-3 football team. That being said, the Packers are still going to have to play a good, clean game to beat them because Tennessee does a lot of things that have plagued the Packers that the Packers do not do, and vice versa, which has led to Tennessee winning games when the Packers have lost them. Plus, Ross Uglem on to take his victory lap about Christian Watson, all of that coming up right now.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You were Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Today's episode brought to you by friends at Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy. First-time users can get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com with the promo code Locked On. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Ross Uglem on the show today talking Christian Watson, what this whole process has been like, and finally getting to this breakout moment. Before we get there, quick turnaround here for the Tennessee Titans on Thursday. Matt LaFleur slept on the couch in his office. Joe Barry in the building all night. They are going to have to get this figured out in a hurry on their Thursday night schedule, which is just brutal on everyone. It's tougher on the Titans, who are going to have to travel as part of this. And something that I have said a number of times over the course of the season is the Titans defense is better than the Packers defense, not by talent, but by discipline, by verve, by energy, and by design, because it is a better design defense. It is a more disciplined defense. You get it. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some really nice players in Tennessee. Jeffrey Simmons has been awesome this year. Kevin Byers, one of the best safeties in football, has been for a long time. They don't have high-level talent the way that the Packers do, though. They don't have a player as good as Jair Alexander. Kenny Clark and Jeffrey Simmons, pretty comparable players. And so you add in Devondre Campbell, who has a chance to be back in this game. You add in guys like Adrian Amos, Rasul Douglas, and you go, okay, the Packers have some really nice high-level talent, and they should be better than they are. We know that. We know that. But they're not, because they don't play as disciplined. They don't play as downhill, as fast, or at least they didn't until Sunday. There was a lot to like on Sunday. Rudy Ford coming up and making a lot of plays. So this is a little bit of a, why are the Titans winning games when the Packers aren't? Well, that's one of those reasons, because the underlying numbers say these teams are actually very close. And the betting line reflects that. BetOnline has the Packers as 2-point favorites. That has already jumped up. It's fluctuated a little bit, but already I think it's been bet up to the Packers -3. So clearly this is a close game by DVOA. The Titans and the Packers right next door. They're right next door to each other. And I think that is reflective of winning some games, if you're the Titans, that maybe you shouldn't win. This Tennessee team is 32nd in yards per drive. 32nd. They have outgained their opponent this season one time. And they've won 6 games. That is nearly impossible. Nearly impossible. That cannot happen. That cannot happen. And yet It's happening. And if you look at, I really like net yards per drive. I think that's a good stat. I like net yards per play as well. The Tennessee Titans are 30th in net yards per drive. That means offense and defense. So on offense, they're creating yards. On defense, they're trying to prevent yards. So you net out, you want to have a high net because you want to be producing more than your opponents. It is bad in Tennessee. And yet, they are 17th in points per drive. They're getting a little bit lucky scoring when they do move the ball and probably getting some explosives. Having someone like Derrick Henry really helps. On the flip side, the Packers 12th in net yards per drive. 12th. That's an above average team. That's a good team. Teams behind them. Teams like Miami, Seattle, New England, Minnesota, Washington, who won last night, New York, 23rd. Unbelievable. But the Packers are 28th in net points per drive. 28th. They're not scoring when they move the ball. And we've seen it. This was the first game against the Cowboys, 400 yards of offense, and they have the 30 points to match it. 369 yards of offense against the Bills, and they can't even get to 20. Now, Big Bob Tunyon, bogus offensive PI call, but they haven't been scoring even when they've been moving the ball consistently. They give away 3. If they don't throw 2 low red zone interceptions and another red zone interception, they beat the Dolphins by 2 scores. Or the Lions, excuse me. They might beat the Dolphins by that many too. This is a team that is moving the ball, that has the underlying metrics. In fact, by a lot of the advanced numbers that I like to look at, the point-based models, the Packers have been ahead of the Titans and a lot of them like all season. And the Titans just keep winning and the Packers just keep losing. And by the way, it continues to be true that the Packers have stayed ahead of the Titans. This is a team that cannot throw the ball down the field. So you cannot play passive against them. You cannot do the thing that Joe Barry has done so many times over the last couple of years and allowed mediocre passing games they're not going to push the ball down the field to complete everything underneath. I understand you want to put a lid on everything, but when they cannot and will not throw the ball down the field, you cannot and will not let them throw underneath. That means press coverage. That means more man coverage. And that means going after Ryan Tannehill because when there's pressure, he turtles. Now, of course, you have to try and stop Derrick Henry. That's priority number 1. This offense doesn't work if they can't run the ball. But defensively, this Titans team can't score. They can't score. If the Packers get to 30 in this game, they win by 10. Or at least a touchdown. Because this Titans team just can't score on anybody. They've had one of the lightest schedules in the league, which is one of the reasons why they have 6 wins. Their Pythagorean expectations more like 5 wins. Green Bay is sort of right where they belong. Packers are right where they belong. They deserve to win 4 games, and they won 4 games. Titans deserve to win 5 and won 5. Well, much different schedules. So this is a close game despite the record difference. Now, the Packers are going to have to play like they did on Sunday, offensively. Now, they've run on 2 of the best defenses in football. The Bills and the Cowboys are each top 5 defenses by DVOA. You have 200 plus yards on the ground in those games. And then now you got the play action game going. Over 50% of Aaron Rodgers' throws on Sunday are play action. They ran it on over 60% of plays. And down 2 scores, they didn't panic. They didn't get off script. If you can dictate terms to this team, and the Packers did it in 2020 against Derrick Henry. That was, Joe Barry said that was one of the first games he watched when he was trying to figure out what to do with this Packers defense. He watched that game. And they did a job on Derrick Henry and on the Titans. A repeat performance of that, and you give yourself a chance to really be back in the mix here. 5-6. It's a shame you lost to a Washington team that just beat Philly because they look like they're going to stay in this thing until the end. It's a shame you lost to the Giants because their schedule, man, their schedule is so sharp and soft. This Cowboys win actually might be critical in the 7 seed race somehow, just because of the way this is all shaking out and the schedules remaining. So I know the records say one thing when it comes to these two teams. These two teams are very close. And if you're the Packers, you're going, okay, but the offense finally looks like the offense. The offensive line is coming around. You got Christian Watson going, and defensively, you found something with this Rudy Ford Darnell Savage conversation. It's a lot of different things, and you should be better against Nick Westbrook-Akina and the carcass of Robert Woods and Ryan Tannehill. You should win this game. That's why you're the favorites. So do the thing and go win it. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. And it is easy because all you have to do is beat a number. And guess who sets the number? Prize Picks. Hence pick. They pick a number. Now, the pick is for your picks, but you can pick a number like Aaron Jones rushing yards or Giannis rebounds. And you decide if you think those players are going to have more than the Prize Picks number or less. And if you put a couple of players together and you're right, you can win up to 10 times your money. It's that easy. You're not playing against someone who's got 5,000 entries and they can just game the system that way. No, that's not what this is. You just have to beat the number. Just be smarter than the pick. That's all you have to do. And they have all kinds of sports. So NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, golf, esports, WNBA, college basketball, all the stuff that you could possibly want is there for you. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKED ON. That is $100 just for using the promo code LOCKED ON. Did you know over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and packages, they spike. Package thefts, they spike. That's why our friends at Simply Safe Home Security are offering 50% off their award-winning security system so that families can feel safe and secure this holiday season. Order your Simply Safe system for half off today and enjoy advanced security and greater peace of mind this holiday season. Having a home security system was extremely important to me and my family. And so we made sure that we had one when we moved in to this house. And it was there day one. I did not want to spend a night in this house without having security. And why not go with the best home security system of 2022 as voted on by U.S. News and World Report a third year in a row. And while you're at it, the 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify that the threat is in fact real so you can get priority police response. Less than $1 a day, less than half the price of ADT's traditional professionally installed systems. SimpliSafe can give you that peace of mind. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. Get 50% off a new SimpliSafe system at simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with the local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. It's my show. Come watch it. Locked On Sports today, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Joining me now to talk about future Hall of Famer Christian Watson. No, all right. We're gonna have fun with Ross Uglem from Packer Report, my old boss at Packer Report. Ross, thanks for coming back on. We had you on a couple months ago to talk about the Christian Watson draft selection, his journey. Before we talk about what happened on Sunday, what was it like for you as Christian Watson's biggest fan to see the injuries and stuff in training camp? Like what was that as you're trying to you have a personal relationship with this kid?
Yeah. I think he fought the raw tag a lot just because, obvious athleticism, North Dakota State obviously not being a Power 5 school. And I think, folks really wanted to label him as that. And so you get in a situation where you're missing reps with the ones, you're missing reps with the number one quarterback. You're not a part of things that you probably should be a part of if you're going to have a high level of success early, and just kind of put behind the 8 ball, and I feel like the entire offense was kind of put behind the 8 ball. But yeah, it's nothing that you want, nothing that you want to see. But I think he tackled a little bit of that raw tag, along with a lot of other tags against the Cowboys. But there's more nuance to his game, and more understanding of a high level of football. And a lot of that, frankly, does come from, North Dakota State, which is something that we can get into. But yeah, it just was not the start to his career that was needed when he's the 33rd overall pick.
When his season started, it did not seem like they wanted him to play receiver in the way that we think of receiver, right? It was gadgets, it was jets, and it was clear outs. And I think a lot of us, myself included, took that to mean, hey, they just don't think this guy's ready. You talked about this raw tag. Like, okay, he's figuring it out. Use him in situations where you can just get him the ball, no thinking, just here's the ball. Or you're running the sail on this concept where we're going to try and throw this over route in behind, or you're just running the go opposite the concept to clear out a side. What was your impression of that? And did you think that was the best usage for him early on? Obviously understanding you're not at practice every day, not in the meeting rooms, all that stuff.
Right. And, I think you can see frustration across the roster. Why are they still playing Darnell Savage at safety? Why won't they play Devontae Wyatt when he seems to be getting maybe the second most amount of push on the defensive line? Why didn't Rudy Ford play until yesterday? I think.
Why is Amari Rogers still returning punts?
Why is Amari Rogers still? I mean, you could get into a lot of that, I think, and but for sure, I mean, that just has. I think it had to have had to do with the fact that Dubs had 80, 90, 110 camp reps with Rogers, if not more, and Watson had 5, or whatever it ended up being. And that is, if you're still getting a kid up to speed, you're still delivering that confidence and that chemistry between he and Rogers. Yeah, I mean, you saw obviously the jet sweep touchdown against New England. You saw him cook Patrick Peterson in what it should have been a touchdown against Minnesota. And those are the kind of things where, yeah, okay, if you don't trust is probably not the right word, but if you're not as comfortable with him in the playbook at the exact route depths that Rodgers wants him at, all of the things that you have to do to be a human being that Aaron Rodgers will actually throw the ball, I can understand why they wanted him to do some of that stuff. And then as frankly, I started joking about guys, they had to have Eric Stokes hurt to have Joe Barry forced to play Darnell Savage at nickel. They might have had to have Romeo Doubs with a high ankle sprain to be forced to let Christian Watson play wide receiver, and this is what you get.
It's interesting, though, because Matt LaFleur did say a couple of weeks ago, before we finally got to see it against Dallas, hey, we feel comfortable with Christian doing everything in our offense. It seemed like he was going to be a big part of the Buffalo plan until he got hurt. Aaron Rodgers said that was going to be the case. It seemed like he was going to be a big part of the plan against the Lions until he got hurt. You have to stay on the field too. I want to get to the drops part of this because that was a big part of the narrative coming out. You and I talked about this when you came on my show. In college, again, this was a thing that was a part of his college scouting report as well. How did you see him respond in these moments where your confidence could get shaken?
Yeah, and that's one thing with C-Dub that I'm never concerned with, his confidence, even if it's a rational confidence, even if it's confidence like J.R. Smith had confidence. And I don't mean that necessarily in a negative way, but like Christian's just not gonna beat up on himself. And I think he has almost a cornerback's short memory, which is fine. Rodgers is going to throw him the ball after a drop. Great. And as it relates to drops, I haven't changed my mind much. Devontae dropped the ball, Jordy dropped the ball, James Jones dropped the ball. They all dropped the ball. I do think that there's a chance that it becomes more of a long-term or a career-long issue for Christian than the other guys, just because I've never seen him have a really great season with drops. I don't know that he's the world's most natural, like, make the diamond hands catcher. Um, but I don't think it matters. Like, Terrell Owens never caught the ball like that, and I'm not putting TO on Christian, but I still say what I've always said, which is, folks, the difference between a guy that drops the ball and a guy with great hands is like 4 drops in a season or 10 drops in the season. I just don't care that much about those 6 reps.
Especially if you have 6 reps that other guy can't make because you're scoring 60-yard touchdowns that he can't make. Like, if that's the difference, and we saw it in this game, right? He only had 4 catches. 3 of them were for touchdowns. The other one was for a key third down conversion. If those are the plays that you're making at a certain point, yeah, it's not really that big a deal.
And by the way, he won all the rest of his routes. Like, the 2 kind of questionable drop, maybe not drop, but probably drop. He won both of those routes. And the slot fade ball that he didn't realize was coming to him, that's probably like a 40-yard gain if he's just kind of on the same page with Rodgers. He won that route too.
And that was either he didn't think the ball was coming or he lost it in the lights. It was tough to tell. Didn't see the ball. I thought Greg Olsen made a great point on the broadcast when he said, you're taught not to look back at the QB. You're taught to look up. And Christian looks back at the QB. That was a perfect example, I think, of what you were talking about earlier. Those are just reps. Like, you have to know, and I said this on Twitter, you have to know you're always in the pattern with Aaron Rodgers. And you always have to be ready for the ball to come to you.
Especially if you're the go ball.
Especially if you're the go ball. So you have to run every rep like you're going to get the ball until you hear a whistle. And he's going to learn that. That's the thing. I think he will learn that. Let's talk about Dallas. Let's talk about what we saw on Sunday. The drops, I think it was easy to start that first drive and just go, okay, here we go again, right? Like, what are you thinking on that first drive? Like, man, come on, Christian. I know you can do this.
Yeah, I was actually because North Dakota State, who I also run their site, had a live home basketball game. I was in the car for the first part of the first quarter, and one of my fellow Christian Watson compatriots, Jake Stack or Jacob Morley, texted me a 4-letter word. And so I kind of thought, that they were like, and I'm not, and a lot of, unfortunately, because of some bad, lazy comping by other colleagues of ours to MVS, it seems like I'm always digging on Marquez when I'm praising Christian. I don't mean it to be that way, but I really expected those to be like, when I went back and watched the replay, I expected them to be like MVS concentration drops. This is like wide open, between the, right in the 9, and he dropped. Those were tough catches. They both would have been sweet grabs had he held on, fully extended on both the out and the in breaker. And yeah, I mean, you're frustrated by those. It's plays you expect him to make. I think even the narrative of his day is different if he makes either one of those, frankly. I mean, and look, the narrative's great. Everybody's very happy. He's all over all the talk shows. Like, it's great. But man, I think if he catches the out or he catches the in and maybe drops the other one, and you have sort of that intermediate success in where you have obviously the deep success and the red zone deal, man, I think you're really, and I'm already there, obviously, but I think you're really starting to open people's eyes up to the different ways that this kid can beat you. And I've talked about him as kind of a tall Debo. I don't think they'll ever hand him the ball the way that consistently, the way that San Francisco does, but he can beat you with gadget stuff, but he can also pretty clearly beat you in the real passing game, especially against man. I mean, if you don't jam him, I don't care who you are. Like, you're just not going to be able to run with him.
So it's interesting. You said taller Debo. One of my pre-draft comps for him was tall T.Y. Hilton, because so much of what T.Y. did was get deep. And then so he used his ability to get deep to kill you underneath, because you had to account for, like, he could run little slants. And because no one wanted to press him, he was a problem in all parts of the field. But it all was predicated on I can go by you at any time.
Sure, and I
And
just mean in that the Christian has more gadget to him. I mean,
no,
they
I
will
I
have the
get what you're
ball
saying. No, but I'm
yeah,
just like
yeah.
you and I agree that the MVS comps were never, they were always made out of convenience. I'll be diplomatic.
Yeah,
You
this
said laziness.
athletic
I'll say
testing match.
convenience.
Yeah, this athletic testing kind of looks like this athletic testing, and they both went to smaller schools. So MVS
Well, and what's more, primary
drop,
deep threats in college with the drops.
drops.
Okay,
Yeah.
Marquez Valdes Scantling. You certainly can see how they went from A to B on that. One of the reps that was picked out was that second touchdown. You and I both talked about it on Twitter. The route on that is just something that, and again, you're to your point on not wanting to bag on MVS to praise Christian. Christian Watson can just do things at his size, at his speed, like the little subtle move to stack the nickel there and then break him off. Guy 6'4", 200 plus pounds. I don't care what their speed is. That's tough to do. And then to be a 4'3" guy on top of it, that I think gives you a hint at like, yeah, there is so much more that he can do than just run clear outs and gadgets and crossers.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think you saw nuance. I think you saw the ability to really sink and plant. And the difference, really, I think, and not that there's anything, as we mentioned for now the third time, wrong with the way Marquez did things. Like he has so much more burst to me. His 0 to 60, Marquez's 60 was great, or 85, 90, however fast you
Yeah,
want
he was
to
going
equate.
faster than 60 for sure.
Right. But the in and out of break stuff, like, and I'm not saying he took a long time to get going, but Christian is so bursty and so fluid and does have the ability to legitimately route guys up. And he's never going to be Devontae Adams or Odell in that way. But even as I've mentioned, like, why did I think Christian Watson was a top 25 overall player and a top 3 wide receiver prospect? Because even if a human being that size, that fast, has league average route running ability or slightly above league average route running ability, his status as a space alien makes him a potential Pro Bowler. And he is a space alien, as you saw him do a full standing backflip in full pads for no reason.
So, what do you think this could potentially open up here for Aaron Rodgers and Christian Watson? Because it seemed to me that when Aaron Rodgers said he wants production, not potential, I read that as a direct challenge to Christian Watson, who comes in with the pedigree, not with the pedigree necessarily, but with the draft pedigree, certainly, not the collegiate pedigree. And although you're probably mad at me for saying that in terms of like blue blood,
Sure.
SEC kind of pack, like it's just not the same as good
Greg
as
Jennings went to Western Michigan, baby.
right.
Devontae Adams went to Fresno State.
Exactly. James Jones, you
Yeah,
can go on and on. Kansas State, same. So where can this go now? What's the next evolution for them?
Well, because I think, and no disrespect to Lazard or Toure or anybody else on that roster, but like, there's not a super duper star among them that isn't Christian. Like the guy that, and not even just that can run away from you. He is obviously the fastest guy on the offense. There's no question about that. But who actually has the makeup to be a one that's available to them right now is Christian. That's you can certainly win games targeting Allen Lazard 8 or 9 times. They've done it. But as far as who can break a game open, like, do you think, and again, I love Allen. Do you think if they run that little RPO slant to Christian, he gets hawked and they have to kick the Mason Crosby field?
No,
He
it's a
hits his head on
touchdown.
the goalpost. I mean, that's just like the subtle difference between Lazard and Watson. But I trust Lazard to make that catch on 3rd and 2. Maybe more than I trust Christian at this point. But as far as like who is the individual driver of offense, it's Christian. And so I don't think that he doesn't have a choice. I mean, and that's what unfortunately unfortunately for the Packers But fortunately for Christian Watson, the football gods have just, as they have told Joe Barry that he has to play Darnell Savage at nickel, they have told Aaron Rodgers that he has to throw the ball to Christian Watson. And yeah, he might drop one in a big spot, but he can also beat the Dallas Cowboys for you.
And that is why, I think a lot of people were going, why did they take this super raw, whatever? And we can even quibble with those scouting reports. Doesn't matter. This is why we saw on Sunday. Why? Because the upside, the big playability, the ability to tilt the field is unique.
I'll say that I do cry sometimes thinking about him and Devontae playing together. But
Devontae Adams made his decision. So
yeah, well, for sure.
That is not really a Green Bay Packers thing. Yeah. I think it's really nice to think about, okay, Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson playing together. They might have hit on both of these guys. And if that's the case, look, maybe Aaron Rodgers does want to play a couple more seasons because these two guys together could be really, really dynamic.
For sure. And I think if we're talking about team building too, moving forward, guys to pay attention to, if they can draft for real what Amari Rodgers was supposed to be, you know what I mean? If they can draft a real slot guy with punt return ability, a good one, I think that a guy like that in a four, a pairing of four with Lazard and the two guys that are rookies now, that could really be something special. And by the way, that player can be a vet too. I mean, the only thing that, and Jake Stack talked about this in a podcast I recorded earlier, like that might be Cobb, not punt returning, but if Rodgers is coming back for one last rodeo and Cobb continues to be productive, there's a chance that might just be Randall Cobb. But man, like I said, if they were able to get a guy that ends up actually being what Amari was supposed to be, to complement Lazard as a possession receiver, to complement Doubs as kind of a guy that did a lot of the Devontae Adams stuff. Romeo Doubs is not Devontae Adams, but does a lot of his stuff. In fact, when I was in at camp, when I asked Aaron Jones for a Romeo Doubs comp, he gave me Devontae Adams, which I thought was interesting. But and then obviously Christian as your, and you don't have to, you don't have to slide. Okay, well, so Doubs is Devontae and Christian's MVS. Like, it's just your true number one, your feature guy, your Randy Moss, your whomever is Christian. The intermediate guy is Doubs, the slot guy is whomever, and then Lazard is the blocker possession dude. You're right. I think you can start having conversations with Rodgers about maybe stick around. This might be something.
Yeah. And the offensive line, we assume Elton Jenkins is going to start playing like Elton Jenkins again. So that would be great for this Packers offense. Ross, this was great. Thank you for coming on to take a little bit of a victory lap here. And we will be sure to get you back if he has another 3-touchdown kind of performance.
Peter, I can talk about other players.
I know you can. I just assume that you just understand you have an open invitation every time Christian Watson goes off to come on and give him his flowers, because I know you will enjoy doing that.
That's great to know. I'm just messing with Peter. I really appreciate you having me on.
All right. Thanks, Ross. All right. Thanks to Ross Uglem for joining the show. Always great to talk to him. I know he can talk about other players. We've had him on to talk about other players in the past. We appreciate Ross. Can we pause the pod for a second? Okay, we're paused. All right, you got to try this. I'm talking the new Built Bar flavors. Cookie dough topper, cookie dough brownie bar, cookie dough brownie topper, new white chocolate peppermint granola, which is Built's take on the granola bar, so it's more filling and probably better than any granola bar that you have had before. I make sure my pantry is always stocked with Built Bars. They're great for travel. I forgot to bring some in my backpack over the weekend. And there were so many times I was like, it would be great right now. Something delicious that can also fuel my body. 17 grams of protein, just 130 calories, low sugar, low calorie. It's crazy what they can do. Get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKED15 at Built.com. That's 15% off with the promo code LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, my show, all sports, everything you could want. It's the biggest stories in sports, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. All right, back tomorrow. The schedule is going to stay the same with the Thursday game. So Lily is going to be here tomorrow. Lily Zalfers, how you doing? We'll have our crossover on Thursday, a great preview for Thursday night, and then we'll go live on Friday night or on Thursday night for our Friday show. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live, like we're going to be Thursday night after the game, go subscribe to the YouTube page to stay Locked On Packers.